collective bargaining, Canada Post has been laying off our workers. Over 150 workers were laid off last week.
With the 10 days of the strike, we've already lost 8 million parcels that have gone to the competition.
The Canada Post workers' strike is into its 11th day and no major breakthroughs have been reported. Good afternoon. Talks are continuing between the Crown Corporation and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, along with a special mediator.
Small businesses are expressing concern about the length of the strike as the holiday season approaches. Postal workers are holding a rally in Scarborough this afternoon, and that's where we find CTV's Beth McDonnell. Beth.
Nathan, yes, dozens of union members have gathered at this rally 1 month to the day before Christmas. They say they're holding this rally to address efforts by postal workers to get a fair deal. Canada Post trucks are sitting idle in parking lots across the country. This is day 11 of the strike, halting mail and parcel delivery. In the latest statement from the corporation Sunday, it said progress was limited over the weekend and the union was focusing on workers like cleaning staff who they don't represent. The corporation says it has lost more than $3 billion since 2018 and just posted a $315 million loss in the third quarter of this year. And to secure the future of the company, it has to put proposals forward like 7-day-a-week parcel delivery. I'm joined now by Larry Charles. He's the president of Scarborough Local CUPW. Thanks for being here. Talk to me, are we any closer to hearing about you guys getting a deal?
We are no closer than we were, let's say, on the weekend. But we are hopeful that some movement will take place, that the company will come forward and get serious about bargaining. We need to get to that area. We're having a wage increase of approximately 23-24%. Plus, we need for all the other areas which are stuck in the bargaining right now, that there should be movement on it in order for us to have a good contract. We need that good contract. You said it's close to Christmas. Yes, it is, but it's not. Nothing is lost at this stage. Nothing is lost. Never mind what Canada Post is telling you about all these great losses. If they were serious about it, they would never have pushed the union to the extent that we had to strike.
Okay, the corporation is offering 11.5% wage increase over 4 years. You guys are calling for something closer to 23-24%. Is that the main issue? Because that sounds far apart.
This is one of the issues. There are other issues which are involved. For instance, their attempt to devalue the pension plan by gradually not bringing in new workers into the pension plan. We want our new workers to have the same opportunities which we have right now. There are also issues which they're doing in order to decimate the whole workforce as it is. They are trying to make a workforce which is as cheap as possible for parcel distribution, which competes with so-called Amazon cheap labor. This means a drastic change. It means an actual cut in wages. This is why there's the reluctance to deal with that issue of wages. They want to introduce only weekend delivery of parcels and all these kinds of things. Now, we are not against it. We have told them you can go ahead. There's nothing to stop you from doing it. But we want at the end of the day that postal workers have a decent wage and better working conditions. That's the issue which is going on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. Now, Nathan, Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. Peel police are investigating whether street racing was a factor in a deadly crash in Bramton this weekend. The crash happened around 12:30 a.m. Sunday near Gorewood Drive and Finch. Police say a car and a van collided in the intersection, with the van smashing into a street light. A man who was a passenger in the van died at the scene. The woman driving the van was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries.
We're just appealing to public if they have any evidence, if they were walking in the area, or they may have a dash cam footage, or who may have witnessed this collision around that time frame. We are appealing to public to contact us, or if they wish to stay anonymous, they can also contact Peel Crime Stoppers.
The 4 people in the other vehicle were treated in hospital for minor injuries.
Meanwhile, another serious crash in Bramton sent a man to hospital with life-threatening injuries. This happened shortly before 6 a.m. yesterday morning in the area of Airport Road and Eagle Plains Drive. A vehicle, as you can see there, crashed right into a home. Paramedics transported a 35-year-old man to hospital. The cause of this crash is under investigation. And a woman is in hospital with serious injuries after being struck by a vehicle in Toronto's West End last night. It happened just before 6 p.m. in the area of Bloor and Dundas Street West, just east of High Park. Police say the victim is a woman in her 70s. The driver involved remained at the scene. So far, there's been no word on possible charges, and the cause of the crash remains under investigation.
Police have charged a mother with second-degree murder following the death of her own baby last week.
The child was found at a residential building near Roselawn and Marley Avenue after the baby's father called to say the 4-month-old was missing. CTV's Janice Golding continues to follow this story and joins us live now with the update. Janice.
And Michelle, well, as you mentioned, the mother of a baby boy who died of undisclosed injuries last week has now been charged with second-degree murder. Now, last week we showed you these images of a high-rise at Roselawn and Marley, police guarding an 8th-floor garbage chute as well as the compactor room on the main floor of the building. Police say they located the baby boy with critical injuries shortly after the baby's father called them to say the infant was missing. Last week, the child's mother was charged with failure to provide the necessaries of life. Following an autopsy, however, the 30-year-old woman appeared in a bail courtroom today via phone to face upgraded charges of second-degree murder. Now, there is a publication ban in place, so we can't disclose details of the appearance. However, police have identified the accused as Caressa Edwards. The Homicide and Missing Persons Unit has taken over the investigation. Now, the baby boy's death is considered the city's 79th homicide of the year. Edwards will be back in court on Wednesday. Reporting live from Janice Golding now, back to Michelle.
Thank you, Janice. And still to come, the growing cost of housing asylum seekers. Another surge is expected as the incoming Trump administration promises mass deportations south of the border.
But first, gridlock in the city is back in the spotlight after an NHL team was forced to abandon their bus to get to a game.
Now officials are speaking out about the issue and vowing to get things moving. CTV's Natalie Johnson has been following this story and joins us with more. Natalie.
Well, Michelle, this is not the first time that celebrities and very high-profile visitors have come into this city and then very publicly complained about being ensnared in Toronto traffic. We all remember when Tom Cruise was here for the Toronto International Film Festival. He talked about getting stuck in gridlock. Then earlier this year, a former One Direction singer had to get off his own tour bus in order to make his own concert down at Scotiabank Arena. Then again, it happens last night. The NHL team from Utah here in town to play the Leafs. They are on their tour bus trying to make it to a 5:15 p.m. team meeting ahead of the game. They say their bus was simply not moving. It was faster to walk. They get off the bus, start walking down to the arena. They're taking an Instagram video as they go, talking about how they have never seen anything like this before. Both the mayor and the premier were asked this morning whether this is embarrassing for the city.
The Coyotes met up with Santa Claus. And the Coyote lost because the Santa Claus parade was just finishing at the time. And it was in that area they finished. And all the big floats and the people flooding out from the Santa Claus parade was jamming that whole area. And it's, you know, once a year we have the Santa Claus parade. And with all the floats and all the cars coming out, that whole area was quite jammed up. But it was just because of that reason. Now, Santa didn't conspire together with the Leafs. I'm glad that the Maple Leafs won. But apologies to the Coyotes that they had to. It was because of the Santa Claus parade.
It was embarrassing that, you know, the Utah Hockey Club has to get out of the bus and start walking to the hockey arena. It's just unacceptable. People are avoiding downtown. It's taking up 50% of the traffic, and we're focusing on 3 or 4 roads to get it moving. So we're going to work collaboratively with the mayor.
The premier there referencing the provincial plan to remove the bike lanes on Bloor, University and Yonge in an effort to get vehicular traffic moving. As for the Utah hockey team, they have played in a lot of big cities, and they said in their Instagram video last night that this was definitely a first. Reporting live, I'm Natalie Johnson. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. The Ford government missed its own target this past year for direct care for long-term care residents. The province says it has since reached that goal, but it happened outside the time frame it had set out in a 2021 law. The province now says it's continuing to work towards its next target of ensuring residents get 4 hours a day of direct care from nurses and personal support workers by March 31st. Officials say residents are currently receiving an average of 3 hours and 42 minutes of direct care each day. Officials estimate there is a need for more than 13,000 additional nurses and nearly 38,000 more personal support workers.
Metrolink is sharing an update on how many transit users are paying their fares with credit and debit cards. Back in August of last year, Presto machines began accepting taps not only from Presto cards, but also credit and debit cards with a scanner. Cards stored in digital wallets were added later. In a report to Metrolink's board this week, officials say those payments now make up 33% of the overall Presto product mix. There have been 145 million boardings using them since the initial launch.
And subway service on a section of Line 1 will end early this week, beginning tonight and ending on Friday. Subway service between St. Clair West and King stations will end nightly at 11 p.m. for planned track work. Shuttle buses will operate instead. Regular subway service resumes each morning at 6 a.m.
And we've got more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. A few sunny breaks, cool but seasonal. Jacket weather for sure. Chance of rain this week and maybe even snow. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Is that possible?
It is. We're into that time. It's almost the end of November. It is hard to believe because it's so warm. It was so warm to start the month, and now we're seeing that transition back to more seasonal temperatures. And with that comes the chance of snow. Not a significant amount of snow, but it'll be a shock to the system, I'm sure, for a lot of folks. Right now, Northern Ontario already experiencing it. For us here in Southern Ontario, we're watching for just cloud cover today. Overnight, we were looking at showers heavy at times, and then this kind of kicks off a bit of an unsettled trend as we head throughout the week. We're for the most part in the low to mid single digits, kicking off our day. A fairly moderate easterly flow to the winds that picks up as the rain rolls in later on today. Right now through the islands to Pearson, 5 degrees apiece. Again, it is late afternoon, early evening that the rain is likely to roll in and those winds pick up, but it is still a very seasonal day. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long range forecast for the week. Right now it's over to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jess. The number of asylum seekers arriving in Canada has surged post-pandemic, and with the incoming Trump administration promising mass deportations, it's not expected to slow down.
Now, we're getting a closer look at just how much it could cost to house more newcomers. CTV's Colton Prale has the details.
For weeks, this Ottawa Sports Centre has been home to protests over plans to build temporary housing for asylum seekers. The site is one of 2 that will house sprung structures, temporary, customizable tent-like buildings where hundreds of newcomers can stay for up to 3 months. Some already exist in Toronto with another planned in Peel region.
So we're really concerned about, number one, the structure, but after that, the site selection itself. Where do people need to be? Somewhere where they can better integrate into a larger community.
Shelters across the country are overwhelmed. At one point, asylum claimants made up nearly 70% of those staying at the Ottawa Mission.
We had 45 to 50 people per night sleeping in our lobby waiting area in plastic chairs or curled up on the floor because we had no beds, no mats. We were already at overcapacity. This has gone on for over a year.
Asylum claims have more than doubled since 2019, and 2024 is projected to surpass last year's record high. This week, new parliamentary budget estimates show the climbing cost of housing asylum claimants. In the past 7 years, the federal government has spent nearly $960 million on its interim housing assistance program. Over the next 3 years, it's budgeting an additional $1.1 billion.
On the whole, what we're seeing in both the immigration and refugee system is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of frustration.
In a statement, the Immigration Minister's office says it's focused on moving to sustainable temporary housing for asylum seekers.
Experts say while the temporary solutions are useful, the real issue is Canada's affordable housing drought, a problem that's slowing refugee supports and bringing temporary solutions to neighborhoods that may not be equipped to handle them. Colton Prale, CTV News.
We return now to one of our top stories, the ongoing Canada Post workers' strike. For more on the job action, we're joined live by CTV's Scott Hurst. So, Scott, where do negotiations stand right now?
Good afternoon, Nathan. Talks continued over the weekend, but it appears there's been little progress made on some of the key sticking points, which have centered on issues including wages and contract work, as well as job security benefits and working conditions. The latest from Canada Post, according to the Crown Corporation, it has put forward proposals to offer 7-day-a-week parcel delivery and other improvements, as well as wage increases of 11.5% over 4 years, more paid leave, while protecting the defined benefit pension and other job security provisions. However, according to the union, the latest proposal on weekend parcel delivery does not go far enough. The reported losses published over the last few years, it says, don't tell the whole story from Canada Post. The union has called for a cumulative wage hike of 24% over 4 years, arguing inflation has put its workers behind cost of living. It also seeks full-time employees to deliver parcels on the weekend, while Canada Post says it has offered to hire more part-time staff. Now, in a statement that I recently got from the union, it says Canada Post says it wants flexibility, but what it really wants is the flexibility to hire lower-wage part-time workers, reduce worker benefits, and create a second-class workforce, going on to say that this weekend, this latest round of bargaining has been an all-out attack on the rights and benefits that postal workers have fought for decades to achieve. So, Nathan, they are still at the bargaining table, but it appears that they are still quite far apart on some of the main sticking points here.
So, Scott, if the strike continues, what impact will that have on Canadians?
The impact is already being felt by many small businesses across the country. We've been hearing from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, as well as many small businesses over the past week and a half, that they are struggling without Canada Post service. So many small businesses across the country rely on Canada Post to get their product into the store and also get their product to customers. So it is having a ripple effect, notably on small businesses, but also on Canadians down to the consumers, because of course this is the busy holiday shopping season really kicking into high gear later this week with Black Friday upon us. And from Canada Post's perspective, it appears that the losses are mounting at the Crown Corporation. It says it's down millions of parcels that are now going to the competition. Canada Post claims it is short $8 million amid the ongoing strike for the 9 days compared to the same time last year. Of course, with delivery effectively shut down, and Canada Post says it has lost more than $300 million before tax in the third quarter of 2024. And as we've been reporting, Nathan, more than $3 billion since 2018. So the losses are mounting at Canada Post. As it has been saying through this negotiating process, it is looking for a new delivery model that will be essential for its long-term competitiveness. But also, of course, at the bargaining table, we have workers, part of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, looking for job protection and also an increase in wages as well. So a lot of pressure at the negotiating table to get a deal done for those who are directly impacted by the strike, but also, Nathan, of course, small businesses down to Canadian consumers feeling the effects of it as well.
All right, for sure. CTV's Scott Hurst on the Canada Post workers' strike. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
This is the final day of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Montreal. MPs from alliance countries have been meeting to discuss key issues. This morning, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressed concerns about Canada not fulfilling a commitment by NATO countries to spend 2% of GDP on defense.
One of the challenges we've always had with the 2% is that it doesn't really matter what you spend it on. What matters is that you just reach that limit. And Canada has never felt that way. We've made sure that our investments are as concrete as possible and contributing to the capacity of Canadians to continue to be involved and leading in so many different NATO aspects. We have to do more, and we are doing more. But particularly stepping up in the Arctic, stepping up in some of the most important challenges we're facing is something that all NATO countries can continue to count on Canada for.
NATO members agreed to meet the 2% threshold by this year. Canada has no plan to do so until the year 2032. Meanwhile, the chair of NATO's military committee said today alliance members will need to spend much closer to 3% of their GDP to implement NATO's new defense plans. Rob Bauer says under the new Trump administration, there will be a much more intense discussion about how much more Europe and Canada need to spend. He says that is a valid discussion.
And following his speech in Montreal, Trudeau held talks this morning with the Speaker of Ukraine's parliament.
Thank you for Canadian people for Canadian government, for Parliament, for all support for Ukraine in those most dangerous period during our modern history. It's very important that during the whole time, Canada always is a leader of supporting of Ukraine. Thank you for this.
The Canadian government has committed $4.5 billion in lethal and non-lethal military assistance and equipment to Ukraine since 2022. In February, the two countries signed an agreement on security cooperation, formalizing Canada's long-term support. And Canada's foreign affairs minister is attending a meeting with her G7 counterparts in Italy. Melanie Joly and the others are gathering, with hopes for ceasefires in Gaza and Lebanon topping the agenda. Today, they'll be joined by ministers from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and the Secretary General of the Arab League. Ukraine is also a priority for discussion at the meeting.
Montreal police say they expect to make more arrests following violent clashes with demonstrators on Friday on the sidelines of a NATO meeting in that city.
Right now, we arrest 3 of them, and we're going to be arresting others because we have some details, investigation details on what they did on the field. And I'm very positive, very hopeful that in the next days, next weeks, we're going to be able to arrest those other groups.
So you just heard there, 3 people have already been arrested. Police say several people smashed windows and assaulted officers at an anti-NATO and pro-Palestinian protest Friday. The organizers of the protest have denied involvement, saying their event was co-opted by people who wanted to commit acts of violence.
Israeli airstrikes hit more buildings in the southern suburbs of Beirut today. Lebanon's deputy parliament speaker has accused Israel of ramping up its bombardment in order to pressure Lebanon's government to make concessions in indirect ceasefire negotiations with Hezbollah. According to Lebanon's health ministry, more than 3,500 people have been killed by Israeli fire. In Israel, 77 people have been killed by projectiles fired by Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations says ceasefire talks with Hezbollah are moving forward. However, Ambassador Danny Danon says Israel will maintain an ability to strike southern Lebanon in any agreement. He says Israel's cabinet will likely meet tomorrow to discuss a possible ceasefire agreement.
Nearly 3 decades after being sentenced to life in prison for killing their parents, brothers Lyle and Eric Menendez will be back in court. A judge will determine whether new evidence justifies a re-examination of their convictions. The brothers claim they killed their parents in self-defense after suffering years of sexual abuse. However, prosecutors claim they did it for money. Defense lawyers for the brothers say new evidence of sex abuse by their father should set them free.
The countdown to the holiday season is on in Paris. Christmas lights along the Champs-Élysées have been turned on for the first time this season. The lights along the famous thoroughfare were all lit at once yesterday. 400 trees along the avenue were illuminated with gold-based glitters, with the lights flashing every 15 minutes. They will continue shining until early January. Jess.
Well, it's not looking like Christmas just yet, but it's feeling a little more like the traditional fall weather that we should be seeing this time of year, with temperatures much closer to that seasonal point. We still haven't seen a ton of rain, though, throughout this month. We're still well below the monthly average, but it is going to be unsettled as we head throughout the rest of the week. We may get there, we may not when it comes to the rain we should be seeing. And right now, no snowfall, but it is on the way. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including wet snow, regular snow, rain, all the precipitation. That's all just ahead.
Opposition parties are calling on the province to recognize intimate partner violence as an epidemic in Ontario.
This morning, the Premier was asked about his government's response. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has more.
On the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women,
seek unanimous consent for the House to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic in Ontario.
When put to MPPs,
Agreed? I heard a no.
New Democrats can't understand why Ontario won't do what 6 other provinces and dozens of municipalities have.
No more studies, no more studies, no more committees declare it an epidemic and do the right thing today.
The government insists intimate partner violence is a problem they take very seriously, that they've invested in addressing.
We will work with any level of government, any partner that will help us to prevent and end violence against women in our province, Mr. Speaker.
Frontline workers and lawyers say this declaration would make all the difference in women's lives, including in court.
Strengthen our argument in terms of asking for custody, for example, for a woman who's been victim of IPV, if the child has been exposed to domestic violence.
This issue was sent to committee back in the spring. The then government House leader said he wanted to make sure that any declaration had teeth. It wasn't just empty words. But the NDP says since then, things have gone off track.
How can we possibly believe this government that they plan to address the problem holistically when they can't even pass a bill that's 15 words long?
At an unrelated event in Burlington, the Premier talked tough.
I have 4 daughters, and anyone ever touch my daughters, it'd be the worst day of their lives. And that's for anyone out there. It's unacceptable, and I have zero tolerance.
But made no new commitment to declaring an epidemic. Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
All right, turning to your weather forecast, an all-new week is upon us. It was nice to see some sunshine today. I feel like we haven't had that much sun, and it feels cooler, and those flurries could be coming.
Yeah, just in time for Santa, I guess. We could have a little bit of snow this week.
We are looking at maybe our first kind of snowfall. Nothing super measurable. We're not looking at, pulling out the shovels just yet, like our friends in the prairies, but it is going to be significantly cooler. And as temperatures drop and the precipitation falls through those colder layers, we are looking at that chance of mixing in a little light flurry activity. 'Tis the season. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. But as Michelle mentioned, some sunshine this morning. Listen, we're getting into the time of year where no, it's not going to be warm, but at least the sunshine helps to brighten things up. We're not looking at a brilliantly sunny day all day today, but it definitely helped to kick things off early on this morning. It is a very seasonal day, and we're holding on to this ton of temperature shift as we head throughout the week. Right now, we're sitting at 5 degrees. It's 10 through Windsor, just 2 through Ottawa. Anywhere north of Sudbury already experiencing this little bit of a cool down. Into this afternoon, again, very seasonal, 6 degrees. We're watching for the showers and the winds to pick up later on this afternoon. So late afternoon, early evening is the timing of this. So give yourself extra time for the commute home if you can, or just factor that into your plans. But everybody today at or just above seasonal. Heading into this evening, we lose almost none of the warmth we built up throughout the day. So we should be at -2. We'll sit at 5 degrees. And almost everybody really and truly has a quite comfortable evening ahead of them for this time of year on the positive side of things. But this system right here is what's going to kind of sink its way through. There's 2 different lows, bringing snow to northern Ontario and more in the way of showers to southern Ontario as we head through the overnight, with rain and the risk of thunderstorms and that rain being heavy at times. So if you're a light sleeper, this might impact you as you head throughout the evening. But we're just holding on to cloud cover as we head through the majority of our afternoon, including school pickup for a lot of folks. So at least it's dry for that. We get into the late afternoon, early evening. We watch for the first round of showers. They do intensify as we get past about 10 p.m. And then we're looking for rain and the risk of thunderstorms overnight. The good news is that the bulk of it tapers off as we head into your Tuesday morning. So the commute likely will be cloudy, but at least dry. As we head throughout our Tuesday afternoon, again, the chance of maybe some spotty showers. We're not really out of the woods when it comes to active weather for a couple of days. We head into our Tuesday evening, relatively clear, all things considered, but some really light flurries just north of us, kind of out towards Aurora. It's as we head into Wednesday that we start to see more cloud cover push in, and then Thursday likely to be kind of a mess. So this week we're not quite fully into that winter kind of travel mindset just yet, but if you don't have your winter tires on, probably a good idea in the next week or so to kind of start thinking about that, because we're looking at that kind of mixing taking place. But temperature-wise, very seasonal for your daytime high today, and tomorrow the overnight low tonight well above where we should be. As we head into our Tuesday evening, that's when things start to shift. We start to see our cooler nights, and then we dip below that seasonal point overnight as we head throughout the rest of the week and for the daytime highs. So Tuesday, again, it's not a wash of a day, but just keep the umbrella handy throughout the day. Wednesday, mostly just really cloudy, but fairly seasonal, all things considered. And then Thursday comes around. The likelihood of some mixing. So is it going to be a measurable snow? Likely no, not for us here in the GTA, but it does add that little bit of an extra thing to consider when you're out driving. As we head in towards your Friday, watching for some light flurries, and then that continues on and off as we see temperatures below seasonal and the precipitation still falling, but likely as a bit of a light flurry. Nathan, I'll send things over to you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
The sexual assault case against 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior team is back in court today. A judge in London will hear legal arguments related to the case, which is set to go to trial in the spring. Dylan Dubé, Carter Hart, Michael McLeod, Cal Foote, and Alex Fermenton were all charged with sexual assault. The charges stem from an alleged incident in London in June of 2018. Lawyers for the players say their clients plan to defend themselves against the allegations, and all 5 are expected to plead not guilty.
It was a family affair for the Maple Leafs when they hit the ice against Utah last night.
The 20-year-old, a loose puck in front. William Nylander back across to Alex. That just missed.
The Nylander brothers out here together. There it is.
And now a steal by William Nylander. Bust again. William Nylander scored!
William Nylander scored the eventual game-winning goal for the Buds. He hit the ice alongside his younger brother, Alex, for the first time with their father and one of their sisters in the crowd. The Maple Leafs recently signed Alex to a 1-year deal.
Really special feeling to be here on this team and my brother here, so it's something I'll remember forever.
Obviously, that was a lot of fun. I mean, if he stays up, it'd be nice to get some more together.
The victory over Utah was the Leafs' 4th straight win. They'll go for 5 in a row on Wednesday when they take on the Florida Panthers.
The Raptors were hoping for a 3rd straight win when they took on the league-leading Cleveland Cavaliers last night.
And you see the difference, Matt? Everyone stayed home and Scotty played man-to-man.
Shed back-to-back threes. You feeling me?
Toronto fell behind early but rallied to within 3 points in the 4th quarter, but they were unable to complete the comeback, falling to Cleveland 122-108. The Raptors will be back on the court tonight to take on the Detroit Pistons.
Still to come, researchers have created a so-called sound bubble, which could help with noise in large crowds. We'll have more on the new tech when we return. For the first time, a saber-toothed cat has emerged from the frozen permafrost. And if that wasn't exciting enough, it's a kitten. For more on this spectacular Siberian discovery, we're joined by who else? CTV science and tech specialist Dan Riskin. Dan, what makes this discovery so significant?
I mean, it's 3 weeks old, but it's also 37,000 years old. So is it old or is it young? Like, it's really hard. It kind of blows the mind. But this it was 3 weeks old when it died. It's the first time a saber-toothed cat has ever emerged from the ice. So this is the first time in over 10,000 years anyone has laid eyes on the flesh of a saber-toothed cat. And it doesn't have its big fangs yet because it's too little, but it does have some really neat anatomical features. It's brown, which is a really big deal. We didn't know what color they were. And then also it's got these sort of tufts of fur on the sides of the mouth that suggest that maybe as adults they had big mustaches that sort of accentuated those big teeth on the sides of the mouth, so like a big Wilford Brimley kind of a thing. So anyway, it's just a little frozen sort of catsicle, but what an amazing thing to see.
Ah, that little lump, not so cute, but I'm sure it was back in the day.
Exactly, and deadly when it got a little bit older, for sure. I mean, this is something that would have hunted our ancestors, so this would have been terrifying back in the day. And it's just amazing to get a glimpse of what they actually looked like. It's the first time that's ever happened.
Wow, it really is. Let's go back to present day now. The University of Washington has developed what they call a sound bubble to help people hear better in noisy environments. How does this technology work?
Well, this is really neat. I mean, you've got noise-canceling headphones. Maybe you've played with those before, where you're on an airplane and they sort of cancel out the droning noise and you can hear your movie better. But with artificial intelligence, it can be smarter than that. So the headphones can identify different voices and then pick out who you want to listen to and who you don't want to listen to. So if you're at a table at a restaurant and you've got 6 people there and you really want to hear the conversation of what somebody's saying 3 seats over, but you don't want to hear all the tables a little bit farther out, you can tell the headphones, set a parameter of 6 feet. Anybody in that bubble, I want to hear them. Anybody else, I want you to turn them way down. And these headphones, with the microphones built in and with AI, these prototypes from the University of Washington, can do exactly that. So you'd be weird because everybody's wearing headphones at the table, but you would be hearing each other better.
That's amazing. You know, we have a relative who's hard of hearing, and when it's really noisy, they're having to read lips, and this would be the perfect means to have meaningful conversation.
Totally. And listen, as we all get older, we all lose our hearing, but it's actually the cocktail party problem. That's what it's called. And that's what goes first, is your ability to hear that person you're talking to at the party and not have them drowned out by everybody else. That's very early in the hearing loss process. That happens to a lot of people, myself included. And this would solve that problem.
That's wonderful. Finally, Dan, Canadians are being asked to vote on a name for our first lunar rover. Tell us about this rover and how our viewers can vote.
Yeah, so the Canadian Space Agency's put out this vote. If you Google name the Canadian rover or something like that, it'll take you right to the right website. Any Canadian, you just have to give your email address. You can enter and you can give your suggestion. Now, it's a rover that's going to land on the moon. It's projected for 2028. It's by a Canadian company. It's very cool. It's about a meter long, meter tall, pretty good sized rover. It's supposed to go to the South Pole and look for water. And they're asking for votes. Now, unfortunately, you're not allowed to submit your own idea for a rover name, but they've given 4 possibilities. One is Athabasca, another is Courage, another is Glacier, and the last one is Polar. So it's going to one of the poles, and so a polar name. And so people are encouraged to go to the website and choose what name they like most. But I can't help but think, wouldn't it be fun if we could all submit our own names? And I wonder, Michelle, if you have any ideas for a name for a Canadian rover on the moon. Any ideas?
Well, I'm the worst at coming up with names. With all my kids, it took days to figure out a name. But I was thinking the moon in French is la lune, so maybe Luna 6, which is a nod to Toronto as well. I don't know.
Oh, the 6. Oh, the rest of Canada would hate you if you named it.
We're the center of the universe there, Dan.
Sure. And the moon is just another thing that goes around Toronto.
Right?
I know. Yes, exactly. I was thinking Celine Dion the Moon or something like that, or Jim Carrey My Moon Rocks Around or something like that. I was thinking maybe we could find a celebrity to name it after. But we'll see.
That's fun. Okay, maybe they'll take some last-minute suggestions, but it's looking like you got to pick one of their names there, Dan.
Yeah. They don't want it to end up named Spacey McSpaceface, which is what would probably end up happening.
That wouldn't be so bad. Okay, Dan,
I
always
agree.
fun to chat with you. Appreciate it. Until next time.
Yeah, take care.
A new report from the Canadian Mental Health Association is painting a concerning picture of care in this country.
Advocates are calling for more action to increase spending on mental health support. CTV's Garrett Barry has the details.
Every Monday, Christy Allen and a group of like-minded protesters take a simple message to the Confederation Building in St. John's. Long-term mental health care needs to be more accessible.
We need so much more than talking. We need treatment. And I know that sometimes that's really complex. And the government only seems to have it figured out for simple, those short-term sessions.
For 207 weeks now, rain or shine, even on dreary November days.
All the stories I have heard from other people, it becomes personal because they share those with you, and then you take that to heart.
A new report by the Canadian Mental Health Association is adding fuel to her cause. It highlights what it calls grim realities in mental health care. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, harmful use of alcohol and drugs has risen, and patients can't get the care they need.
We know that cost is a barrier, which is part of the reason why we're arguing for better funding for mental health and to make it part of the universal system of care.
There are slight variations across the country, but on average, Canada puts around 6% of its healthcare spending into mental health initiatives. The Canadian Mental Health Association says that should be doubled, closer to the 15% that France spends or the 11% that Germany spends.
If governments are not paying, then households are. And since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, with inflation, higher food costs, and rising rent, the Canadian Mental Health Association says that has been getting harder.
The group is proposing new laws to guarantee funding for mental health initiatives and a new attack on poverty to lift thousands across the country. Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
While she's famous for several tracks, including Hello, Adele teared up this weekend as she said goodbye to fans for the time being.
I will miss it terribly, and I will miss you terribly. I don't know when I next want to perform again.
The Grammy winner played her 100th and final show of her Las Vegas residency, which she's performed over the last 2 years at Caesars Palace. The 36-year-old has admitted her time in Las Vegas has been emotionally draining. Earlier this year, Adele revealed she plans to take a big break from music.
Following the success of Barbenheimer last year, Gladiator 2 and Wicked, or Glicked, dominated the weekend box office.
Come with me. What? To meet the wizard. I couldn't possibly. This is your moment. I'm coming.
Wicked dominated the competition, bringing in a whopping $114 million in its opening weekend. Then Gladiator 2 finished in second, earning just over $55 million in its first weekend in theaters.
Still to come, a Toronto-based wealth management company is being taken over in a deal valued at about $4.7 billion. Details after the break.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
There's been mixed reaction across the country to the federal Liberals' planned GST tax holiday. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that if passed, federal taxes would be dropped on a range of consumer goods for 2 months starting in mid-December. Canadians who make $150,000 or less per year will also receive checks for $250. Some provinces and retailers say it will cause additional headaches and financial strain. Women and Gender Equality and Youth Minister Marcy Ian is calling the government's proposal a targeted approach to helping Canadians during the holidays.
By and large, people are saying they like this program. They like this approach, and a good government listens. That's what we're doing here. This is about affordability, and it's about what we can control. Again, we cannot control, how much things are, how much they cost. The fact that diapers are costing families hundreds of dollars a month, but we can control the fact that they aren't going to pay GST on those things for 2 months.
The federal Conservatives have called the proposal a tax trick. As political analysts say, the impacts of the Liberal plan may be limited.
So I don't think you're going to see a lot of complaints from Canadians in terms of paying less tax. Like that's something that I think is pretty universally popular out there. But I don't think it's going to do, what the government is hoping in the longer term. The aggravating factor out there for a lot of the electorate is the carbon tax. And that's going to go up this spring. So, I think, well, nobody's going to complain about this. I don't think it's really going to change the arc of unpopularity for this government.
The federal NDP have said they'll support the minority Liberals in getting the tax holiday and rebate through the House of Commons.
There's a big takeover in the Canadian mutual fund industry today.
Andrew Bell of BNM Bloomberg has the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Shares in CI Financial surged as much as 31% this morning. That's after Abu Dhabi-based Mubadala Capital said it will take the Toronto-based wealth management firm private. The transaction values CI shares at about $4.7 billion. Stocks rose in early trading, but Toronto's composite index and the S&P 500 in record territory. U.S. traders welcomed President-elect Donald Trump's pick of hedge fund manager Scott Bessent for Treasury Secretary. Bessent, who runs macro hedge fund Key Square Group, has called for a gradual approach to implementing trade restrictions. And finally, as of this morning, Bitcoin still couldn't break through that $100,000 U.S. mark. Traders are wondering if optimism stemming from Trump's support for crypto is becoming stretched. The digital asset changed hands around $97,000 today. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNM Bloomberg.
Coming up, discovering a piece of history. A family's been reunited with letters saved by a relative during the Second World War. A Winnipeg family sharing a piece of history found hidden in the walls of their home.
They discovered letters from the Second World War chronicling the love between a soldier and his family. CTV's Alexandra Hollick reports.
Wow, I didn't know I had an uncle. There was an Uncle Robert. That must be where my name came from, eh?
It's a discovery decades in the making. One that wouldn't have been possible without these letters, written to a soldier during the Second World War.
I'm Bob Buechler, and I'm the son of John Buechler.
I'm Kim, John's daughter. John Buechler served in the Royal Canadian Navy in the 1940s.
There's a picture of him on the boat.
On the U-boat.
Stationed at HMCS Cornwallis in Nova Scotia, his family would often write to him from Winnipeg.
So good night, Johnny. Oh, okay.
But what they didn't know was that Buechler kept the letters hidden in the walls of his childhood home.
I had no idea that they even existed.
No, I said, come on, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I'm serious.
The 80-year-old envelopes were found last summer by current homeowner George Arcioni while renovating his kitchen. It prompted his daughter Joelle to piece the past together with the present. She reached out to CTV News in hopes of finding Buechler's family.
One lady in particular named Allison, who is a genealogy enthusiast. So she actually did a lot of digging into the family and found some names for me. So then I was able to look up the names and I was able to contact Bob.
It just brought back so many memories.
Buechler married and had 3 children. He died from a heart attack when he was 40 years old.
He was a loving father. I mean, there's pictures of him with all of the kids at some point or another.
Yeah. When it comes to why the letters were left in the walls,
I'm sure he just probably forgot. I'm sure he wouldn't have left them.
now that they've been found, the family plans to give them a new home.
I mean, they're begging to be preserved if they're lasted this long.
History captured in calligraphy on display for decades to come. Alexandra Hollig, CTV News, Winnipeg.
See that cursive?
Beautiful. I know. Kids now can't even do that.
Oh, I can do my name and that's about it. It's not the greatest day, but it's not the worst, right? I mean, if you're getting kids ready for school, obviously heavier coats. If you're going to be going out early in the morning, getting your steps in, we're holding on to that cooler air to an extent. The good news is we're above seasonal for our daytime high, barely, and for the overnight low. It's as we head throughout the rest of the week that things get cooler, the weather gets less great. No other way to put it. It's going to likely be a little flurry action later on this week. Right now, we're just holding on to cloud cover. The heavier showers for us here in the GTA comes overnight. Right now, sitting at 5 degrees. It just gets a little bit warmer into the day tomorrow before we start to cool down and we look at some rain, snow mixes and some flurries by Friday.
All right, cool. Thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at CTVNews.Toronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here, have a wonderful afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.